Well, I think today is going to be a pretty pivotal day in this franchise's history. It's going to be some stuff that's about to go down that is going to change the trajectory of this franchise for a very long time. So that's coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, welcome to this Friday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter, Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter, and Worcester Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms. This is the final episode of the regular season. I got to admit, feels very weird. 6 months worth of offseason content was not on the agenda for this season. I thought for sure they'd be a playoff team. I thought for sure they'd maybe even come close to winning a round. Did not think I'd be sitting here today talking about a GM firing coming, President of Hockey Ops firing coming, his team missing the playoffs by a single point at the end of the day. That's all it took. They missed it by a point. Probably two without the tiebreaker. They missed it by one win. And yeah, feels very weird to be doing this right now. But let's jump right into it. I reported via my Twitter right before the game against the Blue Jackets that I had heard some whispers that the Ron Hextall firing could come as early as Friday. And I've gotten that confirmed by a couple of other people. You know, I keep saying this. I'm not Elliotte Friedman. I'm not Bob McKenzie. I'm not Pierre LeBrun. I'm not Darren Dreger. I will never be one of those insider people who have that many connections. What I do have, though, is some connections in this city and around the team who are a bit closer and more around the team than I am that I can go to and where I can get some scoops for you all. And I have heard that Ron Hextall is done. The announcement should come as early as Friday. If it's not Friday, please do not shoot the messenger. It's potentially shortly after that. But I have heard it is coming. He is cooked. He's not going to be this team's general manager next season. I've also heard that Brian Burke is likely on his way out as well. This team will need a new GM and a new president of hockey operations. And not a moment too soon. Ron Hextall's tenure has been a disaster. A complete and utter freaking disaster. Every move virtually that he has made has gone to crap and is going to set this franchise back for a number of years. I still think this team can be good next year if the right moves are made and the right person comes in to make those moves this summer. But it's going to be tough with some of those contracts that this new GM will have, like Jeff Petrie, like Mikhail Granlund, like Jeff Carter for another year. That's just three off the top of my head. The Jan Bruda one as well, kind of, if you want to argue that. It's tough out there. It is. And, usually I'm not yawning when I do a podcast even late. But, you know, I feel for whoever's going to come in. We'll have more on that in just a little bit. But from what I've heard, the firing could come as early as Friday, potentially even as early as when you wake up in the morning. Well, if you wake up at 6 or 7, maybe not. But maybe, 10, 11 a.m. After that, maybe. This team will have a new general manager next season. I would be stunned if they didn't. And again, this team deserves new management. These guys were not getting it done. I think Brian Burke is a wonderful human. He's obviously done, so much for, growing the game with the Pride Nights, with the LGBTQ community. And he just seems like a wonderful person to be around from stories I've heard from people who've been around him. And, he hosts all these, these Penguin, fundraisers and stuff. But in terms of on the ice stuff, I don't really know what he did. I don't. I'm serious. I really do not know what he did to help out, filling out the roster. I think he just let Hextall do his thing, and I don't think he ever decided to step in, which is weird. If I hear anything on Burke with what he did, I would obviously pass it along to you all, but I have no idea. I don't think really anyone knows, to be honest. But, this is not a moment too soon. This Penguins team needs new leadership. They need someone to come in here with progressive, forward thinking, who uses analytics and the eye test, and someone who just doesn't go off their gut and tries to acquire players who were good 4 to 5 years ago, like Ron Hextall. Outside of bringing back the core and trading for and signing Raquel back, I can't think of a move that he made that was good. The original Jeff Carter trade, I will say, was pretty good. I guess if you want to throw that in there, but the extension was obviously crap. Other than that, everything else he has done has been dog water. Take your pick. Maybe getting Ryan Poehling in the Petrie trade and the Matheson trade, okay. But you still gave up Mike Matheson. Josh Archibald didn't really do anything, and he was pretty banged up this season anyway. He keeps sticking with the same goaltending tandem. He screwed around with the defense when, I don't really think they got better defensively this season. And he had one of the worst bottom sixes, if not the worst bottom six in hockey this season. The Penguins' bottom six this season were outscored by 21 goals when they were on the ice. When Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin's lines were not on the ice for the Penguins this season, Penguins only scored 49 goals. The opposition, 70 goals, minus 21 goal differential. That is the second worst goal differential when the two big guns are not on the ice since 2007, 2008. The only year that was worse was 2013-14, and that team almost went to the Eastern Conference Final. That's just how good Sid and Gino were that year. Remember that year, guys? Marcel Gottsch. You got Lee Stefaniak, and Brandon Sutter, Joe Vitale, Craig Adams, Tanner Glass, all those dudes. Brian Gibbons. Bottom six was dreadful. This one's pretty close. He failed in epic proportions, and his firing can't come soon enough, and it's going to be very soon. It's a very deserved parting of ways. This team needs a progressive, forward-thinking general manager, and I think Fenway Sports Group is going to prioritize that, especially with what Elliotte Friedman said on the Jeff Merrick show today. He's reporting that the Penguins really want to fill out their analytics staff. He said it's coming, and he said that with Fenway's history as well, this move is going to come very quickly with what they decide to do with the front office, and we already know what's going to happen there. But, filling out the analytics staff, getting someone in there who actually uses analytics, along with their eye test will be good, because no GM that uses analytics or any kind of numbers would have made those deadline deals this year and acquired Mikhail Granlund and Dmitry Kulikov. Those two players have terrible numbers, and they were not good fits. Oh, to end the season, 1 goal in 21 games from Mikhail Granlund. Dmitry Kulikov played in 3 games. Nick Bonino, I'm not going to say a bad word about him, because his was more also bad luck than the kidney. Poor guy played in 2 games. He's probably not coming back. I feel bad for him. But no serious GM, makes most of those deadline deals. And honestly, Ron Hextall is probably not going to get another GM job, and nor should he. He destroyed 2 teams in the state of Pennsylvania. Maybe he works well as an assistant or something like that, but as someone running the show, it does not work at all. It just doesn't. So I expect this news to come quickly. I expect it to happen on Friday. If it doesn't, again, don't shoot the messenger. It's just what I've heard. If it does not happen on Friday, it's going to come quickly after that. They're not going to waste much time here. They want someone to come in here quickly. They need to do their research. Fenway, this is their first time getting into hockey. They're going to have to see who they want to get. I heard a rumor who they want to go. There's one person who I know they want to go after really badly. I'm not going to say it just yet. So the team is in the playoffs right now. That's your only hint. The team that this person works for is in the playoffs. I'll leave that with you all. But yeah, deserved firing, That's how I'm going to end this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, of course, we're going to discuss that very lousy game that the Penguins and the Blue Jackets played and why the Blue Jackets maybe just screwed themselves by winning that game. But before we get into that, we do have to discuss eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right. The first time around, just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, I'm back in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, all the show's Twitter, and Elliotte Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms. So this game, a very lousy, very boring game to watch. I would have rather watched my water boil for Bostic. You could tell that the players were so checked out. They were gutted by what happened against Chicago. They were looking like they were on track to win this game and go out on at least a little bit of a happy note. And then another third period blown lead. The Penguins cough up a 2-1 lead that they got early in the third period, thanks to Jake Guentzel's 36th goal. He had the season with 36, 14 shy of what I predicted this season. I thought he would score for 50. I will take the L on that. But, Jackets get a power play late in the third period, and Penguins PK, which has been awful all year, comes up again with another big one. Emil Bemstrom scores with 3:25 left in the game to tie it 2-2 before who else but Johnny Gaudreau comes in to win the game in overtime, a little over a minute. And after the Penguins had a good chunk of zone time, they went for a terrible line change. Kris Letang today, 1-2-3 Cancun, as a lot of people like to call it, where he's just like, all right, see ya. I'm going on vacation. Just decided to go with the vibes there, to be honest. And Johnny Gaudreau comes in on a breakaway, and that was a very fitting goal for Tristan Jarry to allow because, he just hasn't been good all season. More on that just a bit. But this game stunk. I was so bored watching it. You could tell both teams didn't really want to be there. I couldn't care less if the Penguins won that game. They didn't play well. The Jackets didn't play well. Nice to see Kris Letang get on the board. That's another 40-point season for him. Speaking of Tanger, he had some really tough things to say after the just after the game. So if I can find this tweet here. Yeah, this comes from Angie Carducci, and Kris Letang said, "This year was really tough, especially on the personal side. I was never really able to get into a groove or mentally be or totally be there, if I can say it like that. I'm just going to try to go away and try to clear my head." I mean, if that doesn't make you want to tear up, do you have a soul? It's obvious that, his father dying really weighed a lot on him. I think it would on anyone, to be honest. I mean, you lose one of the biggest influential people in your life, you're going to sometimes have a dip in play. Remember what happened with Matt Murray when he was here. His father was his best friend too. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to sit here and say that, that was like, the down spiral of his career or anything like that. No. I was just saying that, when that happened, his play looked like it suffered as well, at least for a time before he found his game a little bit again. But, between that for Tanger, with his father unfortunately passing away, and the stroke and the injuries, at least the one injury that he had, he just wasn't able to fully be consistent for an 82-game season. I thought after coming back from his dad passing in the injury, for the most part, he was pretty good. People will tell you that he's a minus player. I couldn't care less about plus minus, guys. I think it's the most useless stat in all hockey. If you want to cite me at other stats, I will surely listen to them. But I thought Letang was fine. I don't know what. I think people just hold him on such a high pedestal because, obviously he's a core player. But, the guy's also 36 now. This is not 2016 level Kris Letang, which is fine. You don't need him to be. I I still thought he had mostly had a pretty good year. Him and Marcus Pettersson were the two best defensemen on this team. It wasn't even close. And you saw that with Pettersson coming back tonight. They missed him, man. Just watching him break the puck out of the zone, watching him defend in his own zone, the board battles from him offensively, getting shots to the net and creating shooting lanes. He was awesome all year. You could really tell they missed him these last few weeks. I think if he's healthy, they maybe win one of those other games. He's that important. And, God willing, he stays for a long time because I think he proved a lot of people wrong this season. So again, there's that. There's Kris Letang. We'll get into Tristan Jarry here. Thought he was fine tonight, but he did confirm finally that he was dealing with multiple injuries all season. I've been telling you guys it was a groin. I've also heard it was his back. And I've been pushing the conspiracy theory. Well, not really conspiracy theory, just a regular theory that he's been having a shot in his back, which, his movement was looking better at times, but other times it also was just not as good. You could tell that he was hurt all year. And this is going to be really curious to see what the Penguins do about this summer. Do they give him a shorter-term deal? Do they somehow give him a long-term deal? I don't think so. Do they get a new starter in there? Do they revamp the entire goaltending tandem? We'll have to see. That is a big question mark for me. If it's up to me, I probably don't bring him back and I try to start fresh. I know people are going to come at me and say, well, Hunter, what about, the goaltending market? It's not that good for free agency. You're right. It's not. Freddie Anderson's probably the best one out there. There's Semyon Varlamov too. Some of those guys are a bit older. But, Jeremy Swayman's right there if you want to try to offer sheet him. You see Saros if Nashville wants to blow it up. There's John Gibson on the trade market, though that contract's pretty bad. They will have options. But for at least for this new management team, assuming that there is one, which of course we all think there will be, I just don't see how you can bring this entire tandem back. And that goes for DeSmith as well. I know he's re-signed for another year, which again was ridiculous as well. But I just don't see a way this, at least half of this tandem, if not the full tandem, should come back. And speaking of that, the fact that Jarry confirmed that he's been hurt all year, especially down the stretch, and Hextall still didn't do anything about the position at the deadline, what the hell? Like, that is just terrible GMing. What, Dustin Tokarski's going to come up here and save the day for you? I mean, we all saw what happened last year when they had to play with Louis Domingue for almost the entire series. That's ridiculous. I just don't know how you don't go out and at least get a veteran backup or a 1B goalie to help out your starter. Hell, if they maybe do that, they're maybe in the playoffs right now if they had better goaltending. Just mind-numbingly stupidity from the general manager. I don't get that at all. It's very weird to me. Just okay. Like, I should have been higher on their priority list. Absolutely. Again, overall, this game really doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. The Blue Jackets win, and they don't even have the best slots at Connor Bedard. I will take that any day of the week. And, Jason Zucker did see what he said. He said, we very much like to remain a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Look, I'm open to bringing him back, but I don't think they're going to sign him to a long-term deal. If he wants 5 times 5, he can go find that somewhere else. I don't think that's going to happen here. I think if you can get him back on a 2 to 3 year term, maybe get a little bit of a pay cut, but I don't know if he's going to want one because he had a really good year this year. I would entertain it, but it's going to be really tough to bring him back. That's the one I really don't know which way it's going to go until we see, assuming a new management staff comes in, until we see that new staff come in. Because, obviously these new people are not going to have any loyalty to these players. That's going to be one I'm really intrigued to see about. Because I can make a case for him to come back on a shorter-term deal. I can also make a case for him to leave, especially if he wants a longer-term deal. So We'll have to see when it comes to that. Overall, though, this game really meant nothing. I don't really have much to say about it, to be honest. Again, it was great to see Letang get on the scoreboard sheet. Jake Guentzel ends the season with 36 goals. Sidney Crosby gets 2 assists. He finishes the season with 93.7 away from 100. I don't know about you. That's pretty good if you are a 35-year-old center. But that'll do it for the small game recap here. Coming up in the final segment, we're going to get into just how active I expect the Penguins to be this offseason, why I really do think the keys to getting this team back on track are there for next season, why this team definitely can be a playoff team next year. It's coming up right after this commercial break. All right, we're back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at Elliotte Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms. So obviously with the season being over, which is very unfortunate, we're shifting our gears to the offseason. And, I do think this team is going to be very active. I don't know how many roster changes there's going to be. I would assume a decent amount. I don't think they're going to blow it up. Again, that means, if you're asking me, Sid stays, Gino stays, Letang stays, Rickard Rakell, Jake Guentzel, Marcus Pettersson. I think those are my 6 core players. Brian Rust probably is going to stay, but I would maybe open to trading him if he continues to have some mad kind of years. But those are my 6 guys right there. Those are my core players right now. Everyone else, I would be listening. I would at least listen on trade-wise, or free agency-wise. But I expect there to be some decent big changes. The Penguins have to revamp their bottom 6. As I said earlier, when Crosby and Malkin were not on the ice this season, they were outscored by 21 goals. That's the second worst mark since the 2007-2008 season. That's not good enough. I'm sorry. It's not. That's pathetic. Outside of maybe Ryan Poehling and Drew O'Connor, I think this team needs 4 new bottom 6 forwards. I don't know how you're going to do that because Carter still has a year left on his contract. Granlund still has 2 more years, but I did see something today where a buyout for Granlund does make sense. I'm going to find the tweet. I believe it was, make sure here. I believe it was Adam Gretz that had it. That had I'm just trying to make sure I get this right. The tweet. I thought it was him. Someone had the numbers for the buyout. Actually, no. I think no. I know who it was. It wasn't Adam Gretz. I believe it was King Clarkey, who is part of Penguins Twitter. I'm just trying to find this real quick. But yeah, if you buy out Granlund this summer, the dead cap is $833K for this season, and then the next few seasons it jumps up to 1.8. Jack Johnson, there's only 3 more years left of his buyout, $916K. You would only have 1.75 in buyouts this offseason. Next couple of years, it jumps up to 2.75, and then the year after that to 1.83. It's honestly not that bad. I would very much consider buying out Mikael Granlund. Just not a fit in this system. 1 goal in 21 games, and that goal came in garbage time against the Flyers. You take that away. Obviously, 0 goals. He just doesn't fit the system. Doesn't really do much of anything. Even his passing ability, I thought, was very piss poor when he was here. That's the one thing that a lot of people thought he was going to be fine at. Just wasn't. Including myself, I thought he was going to be a fine passer, but he just wasn't. I think he can go, if you can find a way to get Carter to somehow retire, that would obviously be big, but I don't expect that to happen. I don't think they're going to trade him anyway. But there's those 2. Ryan Poehling, maybe if you want us to stick around, he's a restricted free agent. I'll be curious to see what they do with him. Drew O'Connor, I'm fine with him, but he had struggled a little bit down the stretch. Josh Archibald, he can walk. Dan Heinen can walk. Nick Bonino, obviously, he's probably going to be gone too. But I think this team needs at least 4 new bottom 6 forwards next season. It's going to be very tough to come by, but they need much better depth scoring than what they got. It is not good enough. Goaltending. If this team gets average goaltending, they should be fine next season. I would love to offer shit Jeremy Swayman. That's a pipe dream. I would love to trade for a good goalie like UC Saros, something like that. But, they're going to have to figure out a way to get, to break up this tandem because it's not good enough. It's just not. Defensively, they got to figure out a couple things as well. It's not a good defensive team. Brian Dumoulin's obviously going to be walking. Got to find a replacement for him. If it's not Ty Smith, who is it? Do you trade for someone? Do you go out on the open market? Does Jeff Petrie stay? I don't really think he was that good for this season. He still has a couple more years left on that contract, makes $6.25 million. That's a tough call. Kris Letang's not going anywhere. Jan Ruda, I expect to stay. Marcus Pettersson, you're not trading. P.O. Joseph, I don't think is going anywhere. But they need to make a couple changes. I think they need a true top 4 left-handed defenseman. That's one of my big goals this offseason. We'll get into that once we get closer to free agency. But one of my big goals is acquiring another top 4 defenseman that can play either above or below Marcus Pettersson. Outside of him, on the left side, there is no one there. Ty Smith, fine player. He's not going to be a top pairing defenseman, people. Just not it. P.O. Joseph, fine defenseman. He's not going to be a top pairing guy. That's one of my biggest needs this offseason. I think I would change out the assistant coaches. I know they just got extensions last offseason, but not good enough job from them. Tar Reardon didn't do anything on the power play. Mike Vellucci's penalty kill stunk. I would move on from both of them. I think Mike Sullivan's going to stay from what I've heard, but I think it's going to be on a shorter leash. If this team gets off to a bad start next season, I would not be surprised if he's let go. And I also think he's going to stay because the coaching candidate pool this offseason is really bad. There's really no one out there that's better than him. Now, if you were to have last year's coaching up candidate pool for this offseason, then I would say there's maybe a decent case that you could let him go. But right now, no. No. Already discussed Jason Zucker. But, the bones for this team are there. The core is still very good. Top 6 is awesome. You have a number 1 defenseman. You have Marcus Pettersson. The makings of a good team are there. You have guys signed at great cap hits. It's a matter of, can you get out of some of these bad deals, and can you acquire better players at good cap hits to help out the core to make this team back into at least a playoff team, if not a small contender? Because they easily could have done that this offseason. Going into this year, they decided not to because they were really bad at their jobs. But I still think the makings for a good team are there. And hopefully with the right hires, the next regime is able to come in here and really help out the core, because I would love to see one more run from these guys. They're not just going to sign here to miss the playoffs. They're gutted for good reason. These guys aren't used to this. They're used to playing playoff hockey. And I think they're going to get this turned around. I pride myself on being pretty optimistic. I think it's very hard. It would be very hard, to be a worse GM than Hextall. So I guess that's why I'm a little more optimistic than maybe some other people are. But see what happens. This is going to be a very busy offseason. It's going to be chaotic. I'm just super thankful that this ridiculous season is at its end. I'm exhausted, people. I am utterly exhausted. It was probably the most challenging season I've ever had to cover. But from the bottom of my heart, I love you all. Thank you so much for listening / watching to another season of this show. You all are the reason I do this. I say that from the bottom of my heart. You all are the reason I do this. Record-breaking numbers again this year. We hit over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. My following on, especially on Twitter and just the show in general, has skyrocketed through the last year. You all are the best. So thank you again for engaging and supporting my content. It's not going to stop there. We're going to have plenty of off-season stuff to come. Free agent wish list, trade wish list, draft stuff, firings, most likely very soon, GM candidates, assuming all that. You guys got to keep it right here on Locked On Penguins. I'm not going anywhere. Trust me. Thank you all so much for another great season. I'll talk with you all again on Monday when we kick off the off-season edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Talk to you all then. Have a wonderful weekend. I promise you all, better times are ahead for this franchise. I promise you that.